Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Harley Owens, once again, you have stopped into the Fox Den for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. It is always great to see members of the Midnight Society teaming up to figure out what is going on with the Dogman. Much better, I do feel. The shackles unlocking themselves, and I feel my power source exploding. Without further ado, it is time for Harley and myself to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. We have a member of the Midnight Society who has been here before and is usually a weekly host, yet he's been a tad under the weather. Harley, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Not a whole lot. Just got the kids settled into bed for tonight. So good to be back on Midnight Lycanthropy and talking a little Dogman.
Excellent. No, I appreciate you, man, popping in for sure because I know you're a busy guy and it's definitely really helpful for me to get you on here for sure. And plus, you're one of my good buddies, though, so it is always good to sit down and just try to figure out what the heck is going on. And you actually had some pretty interesting things you wanted to touch base on tonight, so I'm going to toss you the mic here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to catch up with you and just talk. I mean, we always talk over Messenger, but it's always good to get on here and talk and collaborate and get it out there. But tonight we're kind of going to talk a little about the signs of Dogman. Well, what do you mean by signs, you may ask? Well, aside from tracks, you know, there's some other things that I've noticed. Uh, Most in particularly is that I've found trees that are from the range of 8 to 10 feet tall, and the bark's just completely ripped off of these trees now, and there's huge claw marks in these trees. But sometimes I've found claw marks that's closer down to probably 2, 3 foot off the ground. Now, you may ask yourself, well, that's probably a bear. Well, yeah, it could be the case, but some of these instances, like a, a claw mark that I found on a tree a couple months back before I got sick and put in the hospital, from the claw that was closest to the ground to the top claw. Now there was 5 claw marks on this tree, and the distance from the claw that was closest to the ground and the top claw was 18 inches. Now that's a pretty big animal. Now that I instantly, as soon as I seen that claw marks on those trees, I was like, holy cow, that's not a bear. Like, my gut sank to my stomach when I seen that. I was like, you know what, this is something I don't want to deal with. So And there's a lot of debate on whether the Dogman makes structures like the Bigfoot. I tend to think not, but I'm not ruling it out that they don't. But me personally, I just don't see why they would do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Great stuff right there, my friend, for sure. And well, I feel like there's a lot of, obviously, you know this as well, mixed information out there. And it's really why I try to always get our science team involved. And actually, did you see that finally on the North American Dogman Project.com? Also, everyone check it out. We got our science team up there, all kinds of new charts, and it looks beautiful. So when it comes down to myself, I'm just a journalist, okay? I try to always meet up with them with everything just to A, learn more, but also in general, and just try to feed things back and forth off of them. And one of the things we've been talking about is, how a lot of people will say it goes quiet, right?
Hmm.
And in some instances with known predators, sure that occurs, but we actually have some unverifiable potential dogman howls on file where you can still hear some wildlife in the background. Okay. It's not known animals to the area. The vocalization range is extremely weird and it really does sound canine-ish. For people's safety, just be aware. I don't think it has to quote unquote be silent for one of these things to be around because as just stated right there, we have numerous vocalizations where you hear birds and crickets and such, okay? And yeah, so there are points in times where you can hear them go quiet, but actually, now that I'm thinking about it, every vocalization we have, except for two of them, one came from Scotland in a small village where this thing supposedly was roaming the streets, which sounded really weird. And then we have another one that came from Mexico, where a gentleman was living basically a couple miles outside of the main city. It was already quiet in those areas. So, I mean, maybe it had something to do with that right there. But now to answer what you were saying is, well, I don't think they potentially do maybe like the tree bending, like you were saying, and like marking territories like that. I know I've documented cases where they have raged out and just swatted trees down because they were ticked off. And I also know that when it comes to structures, I agree. I don't think they make necessarily like the grassman type like structures, but we have a theory that, because hyenas and things will dig burrows that are 7 to 8 feet deep, right? Okay. And also the Squatch Father, Al, part of the North American Dogman Project, he's the region 3 director. He's the one that, basically handles the Northeast. Okay. He was with others, they have documented basically these dogmen sit at like a 45-degree angle in these burrows. Okay. So think now, what if this burrow goes, 7 to 9 feet back into a cave system now, right? And they cover it up with like brush. So it will look kind of like a fox den or something, except with some like brush bent down over top of it. But if you go inside, which I don't encourage anyone to, because, we had one woman taking some really great pictures, but she was by herself. And in this structure, it wasn't a structure kind of, it was just picture like a circular dome kind of grass and things and brush, right? And then when you went inside of it, there was a burrow that looked to go pretty deep down. And, picture like a trapdoor spider now, how they cover up their burrows and when insects and things go by, boom. I think potentially that might be coming into play a lot right there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Absolutely. And I'd imagine that they could, if they wanted to, make the structures. But like you said, you came across that den, and there's brush pulled around it. Well, there's something with hands has to do that. I mean, well, I'm not going to say hands specifically, but something with intelligence enough to pull that and block its den off. A bear is not going to do that. They're just like bears are pretty much lazy. They just
Yeah.
meander around. They're not going to take time out of their day just to pull brush out over in front of their den. So I mean, you're excellent points there, Kenny.
No, I appreciate that. And also, a lot of people don't realize, same thing with coyotes. Coyotes usually tend to take old bear dens and stuff. They will dig their own dens. Do not like get me wrong. A coyote has no problem digging its own burrow, but same thing. If it doesn't have to expel energy, it will overtake, other things' burrows. It's just really interesting, like I said, because think, if you and I were out and about, right? I've mentioned this before, you're behind me, I'm behind you, whatever, and we're walking, side by side, but then I'm a little tired, you're a little tired, whatever. People aren't necessarily side by side the whole time they're hiking, whatever. And all of a sudden one of us turns around, one of us is gone, right? What are the first things, honestly, logically, people are going to look for? Most people, including potentially one of us, might have some sort of direct panic because, as much as everyone likes to think that we have things under control, unfortunately, during times of stress and such, well, no one really knows how they would react to something like that. As panic and anxiety ensues, are you really now looking side by side all over the road, brushing away brush to try to find an entrance down somewhere? Or are you looking back behind you, in front of you, screaming out for help, trying to pick up your phone or something, trying to get reception to call for help? For real, though, what are the odds of an individual sitting there and kicking aside brush on, the side or the tree line to try to find if someone went down? I don't think I would think anyone probably would.
No, I mean that's just common sense. You don't do that. For instance, while if I'm out there, I'm by myself 99% of the time, and I'm traveling miles and miles and miles off trail in the mountains, and if I wander off of the game trail that I'm on, and if I get quote unquote lost, so to speak, I'm in for it. But I take markers and I mark my trails now, so I can make my way back out. But for instance, say if me and Kenny went out and I was ahead of Kenny and he was behind me, and Kenny goes missing. Heaven forbid that don't happen. But now I'm going to try and find Kenny. So I'm standing there and I'm looking. You know, I encourage everybody carry a weapon. And if you're out there and you have somebody with you and they go missing, go back, trace your steps. They could be just sitting down taking a break, or something's got them. You just never know, because anything can happen. You get snake bit, you'd fall, break your leg, or And I encourage anybody, if you go out in groups or whatever, stick together.
100% preach, my friend. And isn't it so ironic how easily and meek humans really are in regards of getting injured? And people don't realize you can hurt yourself brushing your teeth, man. Like, we're really not as strongly built as we would think. And actually, we've talked about that with my science team about how, like, certain predators are glass cannons in regards of cougars, for example, super short life expectancy and can't really take a beating. They can dish out some offense, but they're pretty weak. They can be brought down by low caliber weaponry and all kinds of, things along the lines of that. But also another interesting thing I encourage people to try to look out for is everyone keeps in sending all the time, oh, we think we have Dogman tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Harley, you're gonna laugh. I don't even have to send these to Nuxium, Brother Nature, our tracker anymore, because I just know, okay, if it looks like a dog or a wolf print, okay, and it is big, then it's just a big wolf, okay? The tracks that we have on file that we believe are Dogman tracks, we have a couple from Ohio. I'll actually send them to you later. We have some from Shenango Valley and we have some from Texas that all fit like the same foot structure could go in there. Obviously, I understand there are different sized individuals, but keep in mind the foot structure would still be the same. Look at yours and mine's foot, right? It's long, it's not really wide, okay? Because, we're upright. So these footprints have four toes, okay? And on the four toes, there are claws that come out on the front and on the back, okay? But it's built similarly to like a human foot. Same thing now with the handprints. We have handprints where it looks to be five fingers like us with claw marks, and then we have some that look to be like raccoonish, which people have said their hands look to be raccoon based. So
Yep.
yes, I think people that's just what is so unfortunate, man, with some of the people with bigger platforms and things. Like, they're literally just showing like a wolf footprint, okay? I mean, think of a Great Dane, how big a Great Dane's footprint would look like, okay? Or even a bear. They're not meant to stand bipedally all the time. That's why their foot isn't elongated like ours, okay? A baboon now has a pretty elongated back foot, and they have front hands kind of like us, which is why they can walk around, and be quadrupedal and bipedal really easy, Same thing with like squirrels and other animals like that are quadrupedal and bipedal. And I think when Dogman run though, same thing. Picture kind of how a bear runs, because the Dogman has longer front arms that people say come down past their knees, that it's almost touching the ground, right? And their legs are bent back, canine-ish. Some people say they've seen some other different variations, but also a lot of times they're reported to be hunched over, okay? Meaning that they're looking like their center of gravity is that they're going to tip over, but they're not. Like when they're running, same thing, that they're so low to the ground. But when they go from bipedal to quadrupedal, picture now when a bear runs, gets the momentum, pushes itself up, and now this thing could use that momentum to be like running on two legs for a bit if it wanted to use its front hands now to make itself more, aggressive or etc.
Right, absolutely. And the Dogman are capable of the bipedal and quadrupedal movement, because I'm almost positive when I was chased by that Dogman that was chasing me, I'm almost positive it was on all fours.
Of course.
And they, they're very, very intelligent uh, creatures. And, I've very certain that I've come across Dogman tracks out where I'm in here researching. I know I've came across three-toe tracks, but I don't know what those are. But they're a very distinct track, and I always encourage people, well, just be sure that you know what you're. If it's something you don't know, it's probably something you don't know, And now, for instance, I would say, if you find like a gigantic wolf track here in East Tennessee, you're miles out in the national park, it's a pretty good chance that it might be a red wolf. But like we talked in the last episode, red wolves are not as big as timber wolves and stuff like that out west. They're small, and they get mistaken for coyotes a lot. So, I mean, like we talked about last week as well, dire wolves and stuff like that, extinct specimens that, could be alive in small populations throughout the country.
100% preach, my friend. And also, I think people just in general forget animals travel, okay? And there's really no reason why there couldn't be gray wolves traveling potentially through parts of Tennessee to get to other areas. The reason I say that is mountain lions, cougars, used to be very prevalent up here in the Northeast. Late 1800s, maybe early 1900s, when supposedly the last mountain lion was unalived in Maine. Well, okay. Again, though, they lived in this habitat for ever since they've existed. Same thing with grizzly bears in California. What is there some magical line that just keeps these grizzly bears from going into California from Canada? What is there some sort of magic line that keeps cougars from coming down from Canada into northern Maine? And recently there was a case of a cougar that they had tracked. It was a young male all the way from the Midwest, and he ended up being hit on the highway in Pennsylvania, but they were able to track him on trail cams all across the country on that voyage up because he was a young male expanding his territory. I just encourage people to sometimes understand that animals travel, okay, and there isn't these mysterious lines out there. So yeah, maybe there isn't known gray wolves or timber wolves to the potential area, but there is no reason for them not to either be inhabiting that area and just certain individuals not wanting us to know that because it would increase potential danger, etc., or they're just passing through.
Yeah, absolutely. And the game wardens, they like to keep a lot of that stuff under wraps. Like, for instance, here, I know people that's got pictures of the Black Panthers on the trail cameras, and they'd show it to the game wardens, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, they're not here." And I was like, "Well, I got this on my trail camera. Oh, well, they're not here. Oh, well, you can't shoot it." He said, "Well, somebody would say, well, I can't shoot it," and they'd be like, "No, no, 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 you can't shoot them. Then how are they not here?" And like it's crazy stuff, man. And like the mountain lions here. Oh, there's no mountain lions here in East Tennessee. Well, you do some digging, and a few years back, I think it was Lord 5, 10 years ago, somewhere in there, they turned a whole bunch of them loose in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Oh well, now we got cougars to worry about. So I mean, it's all shady stuff, man. Like the park services and all that stuff, they keep a lot of stuff under wraps.
Of course, and something very similar like that happened up here. Like I was telling you, the game wardens and such up here claim, there isn't an active mountain lion population, but yet people have them on trail cams, and the news gets a hold of it, puts it out, but then they either don't respond, or they say it's like a bobcat or a house cat because it was from a different angle, etc. But it is definitely interesting for sure, because they'll show them that. But that always ties back into, like I said, I mean, there's only so much, unfortunately, the general public can understand before they just go ballistic and panic, because most people have fragile eggshell minds, okay, and they can't really comprehend things outside of going to work, coming home, point A to point B. But to touch base on the tracks, like you were saying, though, for example, you and I had talked about that, potentially thinking that you might have gotten a large bird species that is undocumented down in that area, or maybe even like a reptilian, because, yeah, those are interesting for sure. But I also always encourage people, again, to try to understand from the angle of how the journalists and how our science team has to look at images. If someone's taking a picture of something and you're putting a lighter down there, think for a second, how big really is something in comparison to a lighter? Sure, that's a cool idea in regard of you're at least giving a perspective shot, but I literally put down a lighter by my squirrel's feet today just to try to see this. Well, no, just because I'm like so over people. I put down a pair of glasses. Dude, her feet's about as big as that big lighter, man. Okay? Sure, putting down perspective things are good because it at least gives us an idea, but we need to not see that perspective shot in regards of like that. We need to see a track pattern, okay? We need to be able to see what the environment looks like. It's not just pictures of this one print with a lighter beside it. We need to see what the trees are looking like, what the rest of the ground surface is looking like. I mean, what is this? Just a one-legged dogman that is hopping around, or just literally hopped right here and then just disappeared into midair? Where's the other footprint? Where's the other image to show the track pattern and such? I think it's super important to make sure to document that. It's almost better to take a video real quick of the footprint, from the angles, and then just kind of slowly stroll around and do a panoramic and let people understand where this area is, because anyone could spend all day making one image and taking just a picture of this track. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like that track that we're talking about that I found. It's right next to a creek on a mossy rock. Okay. And I looked all up and down the other side of that creek, and I could not find another track. So, I mean, the odds that, something could leap that far and not leave another track are slim. But yet again, it could have been something that was intelligent enough to not leave those tracks. So, I mean, just leave the one, because that's what I talk about with everybody else. The Sasquatch, they they cover their tracks, and they'll leave one track behind. And if another Sasquatch is coming through and sees the track and be like, oh, well, he's going this way, so I better just follow the track in that direction. So they're, if you find one track, you know, there's intelligence there some way somehow. I'm not saying the Dogman know how to do that, but I do know that the Sasquatch do. But it's still up for debate on how really intelligent the Dogmen are, in my opinion. But I think they're just as far up there with Sasquatch, honestly.
No, for sure. Super interesting. And well, a lot of people don't realize large cats, for example, despise leaving footprints. They try to walk on in grass, they try to walk on logs, rocks, anything, like you said, not to show their prey their availability. And I actually have a hypothesis, man, of what could have happened with that one footprint that you have. Think for a second, okay, maybe this thing's walking through the water, right? And then all of a sudden, what's it do to gain momentum? starts jogging, moving, and then it uses that rock with one of its foot for momentum. So like picture like step, step, and then as it pushed off of that rock, it could have leapt into the trees. Were there trees nearby?
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of trees nearby. Yeah, and
Yeah, so
and that's why I ruled out a big bird because the canopy was so thick. And I have a pretty good sized hand. And I have my hand in the picture for scale. The track's every bit of 7 inches long at least, and probably I'd say 6 7 inches wide. I mean it's about even with each other. So I mean it's a pretty good sized track. If that was something with wings, it'd have a pretty hard time trying to take off in a canopy.
exactly. So just picture yourself, right? You start picking up momentum, so you're jogging, right? And then you would take your whichever side you're on. So say if this rock was on the left side, right? You would take your right foot, you would plant it in the stream right there, and then from that plant, you would then push off your right foot, get airborne basically, put your left foot off that rock now, and then as you're doing that, you're pushing off with your left foot now, back off with the right, and then you're like leaping up into the tree.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. But yeah, like that, like I was been saying, that area though. I mean, the current it's moving pretty good in that area, and something definitely something definitely wanted to leave that track to let others know of its kind that it went through there, or it wanted me to know that it was in there. And that track's gone now. So I mean, only thing that I've got of it now is photographs. So it's I just sit here at night and I'm just looking at it. I just keep thinking, I'm like, that looks like a dang on dinosaur. Like it is a very very strange looking footprint. And I showed my wife and she said, "What is that?" I said I think it's a dinosaur. She said, "That ain't no dinosaur." I was like, "Well," I said, "you can't rule it out."
That's why I was telling you to reach out to Jessica because she had mentioned something about the Georgia raptor. I'm a Dogman researcher, but obviously I hear of other strange encounters, and I believe I
Well,
sent it
apparently
to you.
dinosaur sightings are on the rise, according to Jessica.
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought I sent you where it was because I don't like putting out information unless I specifically know. But yeah, I think it was the Georgia raptor or something along the lines of that. So yeah,
No, I
pretty.
mean, we honestly, truly don't know what is actually running around in the national parks. I mean, there's miles and miles and miles of wilderness that's yet to be set foot on by man. Yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yes, I was correct, my friend. The Georgia raptor. Crazy. It was first sighted on July 25th, 2008. So, yeah, if anyone's interested in hearing about
Yeah,
that.
I
So,
mean, yeah, that's a 6 foot turkey.
creepy stuff for sure right there, man. And no, I think the big thing is just people really should try to approach when they are gathering evidence and things. I mean, people that are affiliated and signed up with us here at the North American Dogman Project, we cover all that stuff in the manual, but it is just important to look at evidence as a crime scene. Okay, obviously we're not all trained in regard to that, but a lot of it's just common sense and such. And it's okay to move leaves out of a footprint to take a better image. Also, people, don't worry, you're not going to destroy the track. You're not going
Oh
to.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that doesn't hurt anything. If there's a little branch laying in there and the branch is broke, pull the branch out of it. It's not going to hurt anything to take it out of it. Absolutely not. So, if you come across a track and you got leaves in it, just take your time and just very carefully just remove them. Unless you're going to take a environmental DNA sample, which you take samples of the soil and you take the samples to testing. But I mean, other than that, if you're going to take a picture of it and use something for scale, just clean it out a little bit and take a picture.
Exactly, and especially if you're going to cast it, like you said, take a branch, flip the other branch out of the way if you're worried about contaminating it, but you're not going to damage the track. And it is important too because a lot of times our tracker can look at those footprints and just tell you, hey, look, There are smaller animals travel behind larger animals. They just do, okay? Bears are sloppy eaters. They're omnivorous. So little smaller individuals like raccoons and squirrels like to follow bears because they're always knocking down other berries and things and nuts and such that they can feed off of. So they end up walking behind them in their tracks too, because again, path of least resistance. People don't realize that animals don't like to waste energy. So same thing in the wintertime. They'll walk over the same path. You'll see different animals using it just like we do and such. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're gonna follow something that knows where the food is. So, like you just said, the squirrels are going to follow around in behind the bear for berries, acorns, whatever the case may be. Um, and who's to say that, the bears don't follow around the Bigfoot, I mean, it's obvious that the coyotes do because you'll hear coyotes mixing in with the Bigfoot or the Bigfoot mixing in with the coyotes rather. But, it's all about, symbiotic relationships in the end when you're, trying to figure out who really is the apex predator out there in the forest. Me personally, I think it's Dogman ultimately because I think Bigfoot more tend to be the gentle giants, but the Dogman is something that I encourage everybody. You don't go looking for it because it's going to find you before you find it.
now, isn't that the truth, my friend? And before we let you go, I do want everyone to know that of all the cases we've documented, it is the cases where the females are the most docile. Yet I'm not telling anyone that a female cannot rage out either.
Hey, I guarantee you what happened with the instance of mine. I guarantee you, I got too close to a pup, and it wanted me out of there. I've been thinking about it ever since, and I'm like, what if I wandered across on a pup? Because its hair was pretty long. I couldn't tell if it was a male or a female. All I know is it wanted me the hell out of there.
Right? No, it's true. It's usually the males that are straight up gnarly. And remember those images I made with the quote? It's like the quote Jody has. This thing's an apex predator, and all it wants to do is eat you.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And I encourage anybody, if you're going out and you actually want to get into researching and looking for these things, you know, keep a weapon on you. And if you come across one, aim for the head.
Truth, right? And I remember our tracker, Nuxium, being interviewed and he's talking, and someone asked him the question as to, so what do these things do? And he had just told a bunch of stuff already. And he's like, what do you mean? What do these things do? The person asked, he's like, well, what do they do? What's their purpose? And Nuxium's like, their purpose? Take you back to their cave and num, 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 num.
Yeah, I mean, they got families to feed too. So, I mean, yeah, I would hate to be on the dinner plate.
Right, straight up. But all right, man. Well, thanks again for stopping in tonight and hanging out with us. I always do appreciate it. And make sure to keep me posted on any sort of new hypothesis or theories that you're popping up with. And I'm supposed to talk to Doug Highchuck here sometime this week. So once I figure out a little bit more with what's going on with the Monster Quest reboot, I'll definitely keep you posted on that. But I do know here coming up in the next couple of weeks, Jody wants to start working on the Germantown, Ohio, and getting that put out. So we'll keep you in the loop of all that for sure, because I know Doug wants to do at least, I think he said 3 episodes with the Dog Man. So I just need to know if what he wants us to get together for a team and such. So I'll definitely keep you in the loop of all that for sure.
Oh yeah, I'd love to be a part of that. Absolutely, and I've seen Dogman. I've captured them on film. I know where they're at. So I mean, if anybody was going to try and make it happen, it'll probably be me. I mean, they're here in Tennessee. I can say that 100%.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm. And I will catch you on the next one.